Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Fierce Calling podcast. I'm your host, author, blogger, and speaker, Doris Swift. This podcast is about a community of women who are taking action where their passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. They're answering God's call on their lives, rising above difficult circumstances, and using their gifts to impact the world for Christ. We serve an awesome God, yet life can take an unexpected turn. And what do we do with that? Today, I welcome my friend, Mary White. Mary has been in ministry for over 20 years and is passionate about helping others go deep in the Word and gain insight into the cultural and geographical aspects of biblical text. But her direction and calling didn't always look as it does today. After tragedy struck, God called Mary in a new direction, and she shares all about her fierce calling and how she was able to move forward on a new adventure with God. Her story will inspire you. Listen in as I have a chat with Mary White. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fierce Calling podcast. Today I have my friend Mary White with me. And I've known Mary for several years, and we attend the same church. She has a fierce calling and such a powerful story, so I am excited to have her on today. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate you taking time out just to talk.
Oh, well, I appreciate you because I know how busy you are and just here for a short while, and then you are going back to Israel. So you have things you need to get done before you go. So thank you for taking your time today to do this show with me. So Mary, I love asking my guests, where are you taking action where your passion, compassion, and conviction intersect?
That's a very awesome question because my passion, I think if you were to say one thing, it would be encouraging people to dig deep within the biblical text from a contextual and a cultural perspective so they can really understand the message that God has left his children. How did I get to this point? That's a whole nother story. I've been in ministry for over 20 years. My husband and I were youth pastors in Maryland. We've served in different ministries and adult ministries as well. And I guess my journey for where I am today really began when my husband lost his life. It was a very sad time for me. He was actually killed at the hands of another person.
Yeah.
No warning, no idea that life was going to change. People ask, why do bad things happen to good people? And I can truly say it's because we're a fallen world.
Yes.
We have free will. There are consequences to our actions, and my husband's death just happened to be someone's free will choice to do something that then had a consequence of his death. I also bless God for the opportunity to have been able to forgive that person who was responsible for my husband's death within 36 hours of that event. Really, that began a new level of a journey chasing after God. It's like, God, what's next for me in this journey? I've taught your word. I've been involved in ministry. It was my husband and I together. We put you in the center of our relationship. Our love for each other was after our love for you, which sometimes didn't always happen. You want to put God in the middle of everything all the time, but we're human. Sometimes we weren't as successful as others, but we really ended the day in a relationship that most people don't have as husband and wife, because he was my best friend. And my job was to make sure all of his dreams came true. And his job was to make sure all of my dreams came true. And we really never went to bed angry at each other. We didn't do that. There was a couple of nights we didn't go to sleep. But we really
Yeah.
followed that. So when he was called home to glory, and I am still here, it's like, okay, God, what's next in the journey?
Yeah.
And the journey began to what was my next calling, and have been different places searching out answers from God, places that are quiet places. The first thing I did was went on a pack trip in Montana so that I could be with nature and close to God, to hopefully hear answers to those questions.
Mm-hmm.
In 2014, I had an opportunity to go to Israel for the very first time. And when I went to Israel for that first time, um, I was standing on a mountain called Mount Arbel.
Mm-hmm.
And every single Hebrew name has a meaning, and Arbel means God's ambush. And I was definitely ambushed on Mount Arbel. And God spoke to my heart the importance of understanding his word that was written to his people. And it was written to an audience at a time period that they understood what was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to understand the context of that for us to be able to walk away with the truths and the teachings that he has in his word.
Mm-hmm.
So that became a passion, to teach his word to anyone who crosses my path, that God puts in that path,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is from a contextual as well as a content specific. What is he saying? What's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
Perspective, so that you get a
Yeah.
clearer understanding.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Would you say that the journey, that turning point was at the point that you released that forgiveness and then you moved forward?
I think it's a process
Mm-hmm.
where your heart has to be ready for what God has for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
I know that all of us are like praying, God, show me the way, give me something. I want this, I want that.
Yeah.
I want to see what my future looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you, if God would have revealed to me what my future was 10 years ago, before my husband was killed, I would not have been able to do what he had planned for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
My heart had to be in the right place. That
Yeah.
forgiveness was part of it, but it
Mm-hmm.
was also part of it was, what value to the kingdom do I have separated from my husband?
Mm.
Because before we were a team,
Right.
and now it was just me.
Yes. And that reminder of that, even in a married couple's relationship, where the two become one, and then God does still have plans for us individually. And I just watched all of the things unfold with what he's doing in your life and the opportunities that he has brought forth and the doors that continue to open. But Mary, I can definitely attest to the fact that your passion is to teach the Word of God, God's truth, and all of the cultural aspects that we don't really think about sometimes when we read the Bible.
Yeah, an example. I spoke at a ladies group on Tuesday of last week,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole focus was biblical hospitality.
Mm.
We used different examples in the text to kind of show what I was talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and how we don't really understand what they mean, what it means.
Mm-hmm.
The primary example, and the first example I use, is where in the book of Genesis, Abraham is visited by three strangers,
Mm-hmm.
and he immediately runs out of the door of his tent to greet them and offers them, asks for them to stay, and offers them water for their feet, to wash their feet,
Mm-hmm.
and water and bread to eat. And in the meantime, he runs back to the tent to tell Sarah, hey, prepare 3 seahs of fine flour,
Mm.
for cakes and bread for the guests.
Mm-hmm.
And then to a servant to go and bring a fattened calf and prepare it for a meal. Well, we don't really think about what that means because, we go to the grocery store, we buy a loaf of bread, we buy a package of hamburger meat or whatever. It's in our refrigerator. We
Right.
don't realize that, first of all, 3 sieves of flour is about 35 pounds of flour.
Wow.
So we're going to use 35 pounds of flour to make, bread or fine cakes, depending on your translation of the text, for these 3 men. And a fattened calf for 3 men, that's a lot of meat for 3 men.
Yeah.
And you know how long it takes to pull the calf out of the field, to actually process it before it goes on the grill, and then to serve it? We're talking, a day and a half preparation for a meal. And what was promised was little. What was delivered was a lot. And that's what biblical hospitality really is all about, is basically promising little, but providing a lot. But also by having them come to his home, he also came under their protection, because groups of tents within the wilderness areas that the shepherds would have been in the land, there's great distances between those tents, and no water and no food and no protection.
Wow.
So each one of those camps were like rest areas that we have today. And unless you understand that these are like way stations or rest areas, and that you're also under the protection of the master or the host of the house, which would be the father of the house, because they were a patriarchal society, you don't really understand the next story, which is the story of Lot, where the angels come and become his guests, and the city men want the guests to come out and be harmed. He offers his daughters instead, because as a host, you're to keep your guest safe, even at the cost of your own family.
Wow.
But we don't understand that. That's a cultural difference in the text.
Yes, I just even read that part because I'm going through the Bible chronologically, and reading that, I remember I've read it before and I've heard it before, and I've heard preaching and sermons and this and that on it, but it is so difficult to think about giving up your own child to protect someone that you are showing hospitality to or having invited into your home. That's a great expansion on our definition of hospitality, because when we think of hospitality, we just kind of think about it as inviting someone in your home and offering them a cup of coffee or tea and maybe a scone or something. But this is like, wow, hospitality at its best. And like you say, in the confines of a different culture, it's pretty fascinating to hear about that.
It is. And, there are things that we just don't understand as 21st century eyes. It's so important to go back to that context.
Yes. And you have, you studied here in the States, and then you had an opportunity and still are involved in the educational process in Israel. And so what kind of adjustment was that? How did that begin? And what kind of adjustment was it for you to go back and forth between the different cultures, even of today?
Well, when you go to Israel, you're stepping into different time zones. One of the time zones you step into, of course, is the modern culture. You fly into Tel Aviv. It is a modern city. It has all of the things that modern cities have. It would be like flying into Boston or New York City or Washington, D.C. It is, high rises, very, very modern. Then you get onto the highway. And let me tell you, they drive very differently than we do. They drive like there is no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you are putting your life in your own hands when you ride in a cab or in a shuttle, because they do drive like there is no tomorrow. And you think that in the big city, when a light turns green, there's immediately people blowing their horns.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Israel, they blow their horn before the light ever even begins to turn yellow or green because it's just move, go. I am so important. I got to go. And in fact,
Wow.
in some of the streets of Jerusalem, because of, how you have congestion at lights,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have people in the intersection and the
Mm-hmm.
light turns red so that the other side can go. 4 cars, 5 cars, 3 cars behind the guy in front who can't do anything. They're
Mm-hmm.
just laying on horns. It's hilarious. Very different way of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get into Jerusalem itself, especially in the old city,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you really see a mixture of cultures. The old city is broken up into 4 different quarters.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Armenian quarter, which is the smallest of the quarters. You have the Jewish quarter, you have the Christian quarter, and you have the Muslim quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're kind of all intermixed, but because you do have people living outside of their designated quarter, because they're not like you have to live here because you're this.
Right.
However, the majority of the shops in the different quarters cater to the different types of groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, you have a whole mixture of things going on. Plus, you have visitors who are making pilgrimage because Jerusalem, specifically the old city,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the focal point, Jerusalem being a
Uh-huh.
focal point for 3 different religions.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you have 3 different ways of worship or 3 different groups of people to worship. But
Mm-hmm.
within each religion, there's different ways to worship. Like in the Christian quarter, you have your Eastern and you have your Western Christian movement.
Mm-hmm.
Eastern would be your Orthodox, your Greek Orthodox or your Orthodox Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Catholic or Protestant being representative of your Western. And they're very different. And the way that they present themselves, even just walking in the street, is very different. Um, for example, I was walking the streets and there is a priest, a Greek Orthodox priest, and as he stepped, he would take his cane and hit the ground really, really hard with every other step, kind
Mm-hmm.
of follow me. And he, of course, his students would all be behind him. It was
Huh.
very, very strange. I have no idea why, because no one's
Uh-huh.
ever asked the question why,
Uh-huh.
but I just thought it was very strange. And then, of course, with
Mm-hmm.
the priests, the Catholic priests, and then you have the monks behind them or various order behind them, they walk the streets, but it's very different. Their clothes are different than the Greek Orthodox. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have the Protestants. Well, anything goes as far as dress. So they kind of blend with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Also in the Christian quarter, you have a mixture of Jewish Christians. You have a mixture of Arab Christians, as well as people that are there doing ministry that are from every walk of life. Americans, as well as Canadians and other English speaking, Britain and Australian, but also from all countries in Europe. We even have some from different South American countries, all missionaries to the city of Jerusalem, all kind of congregating around the Christian quarter.
Wow,
Then you have
that's fascinating.
and then the Armenians are also Christians, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't really mix that much with the Christian quarter because the way that they actually celebrate follow more the same days as the Jewish
Mm-hmm.
days for celebration as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're more of a Saturday service as opposed to a Sunday service. You have the Jewish quarter that has Shabbat that starts on Friday evening that goes to Saturday evening. So the entirety of the Jewish quarter is very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the Jewish quarter, you have Orthodox, ultra Orthodox, as well as Reformed. And so each type of branch of Judaism is slightly different, and how they interact is slightly different. And the way they dress is different as well. Also, in the Orthodox and ultra Orthodox, depending on where they came from in the European or in the Eastern or Western European theater, the men still wear the costume of their rabbi from 200 years ago.
Wow,
So they're
my.
it's like, okay, that takes following the rabbi to another level.
Yeah.
The Muslim quarter is the largest of the quarters,
Mm-hmm.
and the streets are probably packed well, they are packed tighter than the other streets. You figure for every one person in the Armenian, Christian, or Jewish quarter, there's probably 15 people in the Muslim quarter.
Just with you describing that, it's so diverse across the quarters, but also within the quarters. And so if you're Christian, you're in the Christian quarter, it feels welcoming then and comfortable.
I would say all of the quarters feel welcoming and comfortable during the day.
Mm-hmm.
I would not go into some of the areas in some of the quarters at night, just like any other big city.
Mm-hmm.
But stay on the main streets and you're with people, you're not by yourself. Even night is okay. The key, though, to also understand is you have a police force that is also in the old city, and they tend to shoot first and ask questions later.
Oh dear.
It's not quite as bad as that sounds, but they are definitely there to keep the peace within the city. And usually any of the disturbances that occur is against them, not against the people. And that's the sad part, is that and you also have a military presence as well. And all of the violence lately has been toward them, not toward any of the tourists or people that live there. And that part is sad.
Yeah. And you're going back to finish up. How much more schooling do you have left over there?
I have completed 3 semesters. I have 1 semester left, and I will be completing a master's degree in biblical history and geography.
Wow, that is awesome, Mary. And now, what is the name of the university there?
I'm attending Jerusalem University College, and it is located on Mount Zion.
That's pretty cool. Like, really cool. So, and then once you do finish this, I know you did have a heart for doing the teaching tours and things there.
What I'm looking at is what it would take to be an adjunct professor at Jerusalem University College that would allow me to bring people over as students for a 2-week study tour of the land. It's not a tourist tour. It's a come, let's get deep into the text and let's take a look at the lay of the land, so you get a better feeling and understanding for why things happened, where they happened, as well as what influences from the cultures that surround the land of Israel seen through the text.
And that is just like learning with your feet actually on the ground in the places where Jesus walked, and all of these things that we read in the Bible just come to life. And that's amazing. And that is a fierce calling, Mary. And I'm just so proud of all the things that you're doing there and what God is doing. And you're just answering his call. And it just inspires other women to know that God opens the doors, and things that we would feel like would be impossible or would never happen. Nothing's impossible with God.
Oh, that is so true.
Yeah.
Because I bless God every day for his gift, because being able to go to school in Jerusalem has been truly a gift. And I thank everyone who has been a cheerleader and a supporter of this process. It hasn't been easy. There have been many, many hours of study. I still have many, many hours of study to finish the comprehensive exams. So, any and all prayer is appreciated.
Yes. Yes, definitely prayers for you.
But at the same time, learning to rely on God and learning to rely on him by leaning into his strength, because it's not my strength. It's his strength that builds us up so that we can accomplish what he set out for us to do. And I truly believe that's one of the things that I am called to do, is to teach the biblical text in its context.
Yeah, that's just beautiful. And sometimes I'll ask, what would you want the listener to know? And that is beautifully worded. And I feel like that is so important for everyone to remember, and not everybody's walk or journey will look the same, but it's just an encouragement to study and show thyself approved, and that can look like a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but you're just this walk that you're on and this journey. I've been excited to just kind of witness it all unfolding, and it's just amazing. And if anyone has an interest or wanted to ask you more about some things that you shared, how can they connect with you, Mary?
Because I'll be leaving the United States and be living in Israel for the next 5 months, the best way to contact me will be via an email, and I'll respond to my emails. My email address, and that's DUNDANCEN@hotmail.com. You may ask, why Dundanson? Dundanson was a name of one of the horses that was born on our farm. His mother was confirmed pregnant by the veterinarian on a Saturday. He came home on a Sunday, and my husband, unfortunately, was killed on that Monday. So he's the last one that we bred together, because we did have a small breeding facility on our farm, breeding Arabs and half Arabs. And that's his name. He's the last one we bred. So I took that as my email address just because.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I would love if the listener would want to reach out to you and just get some more information and maybe some guidance if God is calling them to something similar, so that you can share your journey and some wisdom that he's given you on this road. And as you say, adventures with God, because it certainly is an adventure for sure. So Mary, thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate that. I know you have another engagement right after this one. And so thank you so much for being here and sharing a little bit about your journey and what God is doing in your life.
You're welcome. And one last thing, in Habakkuk, he talks about how God gives us the feet we need for the path that we're on. You said so true. Everyone has their own journey. They're on their own path. Yes. And God will provide what you need when you need it as you journey.
Wow. What better way to end our conversation today? That is awesome. Thank you so much, Mary.
You are so welcome.
Okay, friend. Well, I'll be talking to you soon. Thank you for listening. I hope Mary's story sparked a new desire in you to take that next step, explore a new opportunity, and walk in your fierce calling. It was fascinating to hear about her experiences in Jerusalem. She would never have imagined she'd be finishing up her master's degree where Jesus walked. You can connect with Mary via her email, and I'll add her email address in the show notes. God's plans for our lives are beyond our wildest imagination, and He is calling us to deeper intimacy with Him. You have a fierce calling, friend, so walk worthy of your calling and keep using your gifts to impact the world for Christ. I would love to connect with you too, so check out my blog at dorisswift.com. There you'll find my free Goodbye Regret Bible Study and Prayer Journal, because we don't have time for regrets when we have a fierce calling to walk in. I appreciate you so much, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you'll never miss an episode. I'd like to leave you with this scripture. I will praise you, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will tell of all your marvelous works. Psalm 9:1. No matter what we are called to do, we are always called to go and tell. I hope you'll join me next week when I welcome another woman who is taking action where her passion, compassion, and conviction intersect. Until then, have a blessed week, friend, and I'll talk to you soon.